Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video I'd like to look at how the USE minis unfolded yesterday, which was Wednesday, November the 19th, particularly the YM. But the first point to notice is whenever you get any announcements that's going to move the market. For example, the Fed released the minutes of their meeting yesterday at 2 o'clock, and you can see this is what happened as the market sort of shot down, shot up, then drifted down, then went back up again. Really choppy and horrible kind of market movement here. And also before that, you can see for a couple of hours before that, it was just basically just moving sideways. So always be aware of when there's going to be news announcements that are potentially going to move the market, and just be very, very wary of that. If anything, don't trade before that, because you don't want to get caught up in this kind of chop and then this kind of sharp movement. So that's just a word of advice to start with. But on the YM, we actually had an interesting day yesterday, because if I go to the 15-minute chart, in our training webinar yesterday we were looking at how we were placing our DP off the prior low, and that caught the very low of the day yesterday. You can see it went down, nailed the low absolutely perfectly. If I go back to the 3-minute chart, you can see absolutely perfectly nailed the low of the day. It's a pity that this didn't happen on all the USE minis, because if I go to the ES, we were coming down here and we hadn't quite reached its DP there from the 15-minute chart. And on the YM, sorry, not the YM, the NQ, the NQ was actually coming off a wave 5 high up here from the previous day. If we do Elliott wave intermediate, you can see how the market made the high right at the minimum wave 5 WPT. We'd gone through the DP from the prior wave 4 was here. Therefore, we're anticipating the NQ to carry on down to the DP from the start of the sequence, which obviously it didn't do. So there's a bit of a disagreement yesterday between the three USE minis, and when that happens, we normally suggest that you have caution, because we like it when all the USE minis actually telling us the same thing. The main ones ES, YM, NQ, and the Russell Index, the TF, if you actually trade that as well. But I want to go back to the YM because I want to look what happened the day before, and this is what we covered a bit in our training webinar yesterday. What we were looking at was a DP from a prior swing pivot high up here. Remember, these are leading indicators. These are on the chart in advance before the market even gets there. So here, the market on the previous day, which was Tuesday the 18th up here, can you see how the market went into this DP level, was chopping sideways for a while, went above, then snapped back straight down again. In other words, was finding resistance at this 15-minute DP. In other words, we were at a resistance area. When this happens, we tend to look at the shorter term charts for potential trade setups. And what we were looking at was on the 3-minute chart, there wasn't anything in particular. The only thing that happened on the 3-minute chart is if we take a DP from this pivot, you can see that the minor DP up here caught the high of the day absolutely perfectly, but there wasn't particularly an easy trade setup at the top here. But what we were looking at was our 5-minute chart. And on our 5-minute chart, we actually had an automatic DP sell. Now remember, when we change time frames on this DP, we look at the DP on the time frame that it was placed on the chart to see whether it's finding support and resistance. So remember, on the 15-minute chart, this was actually snapping back down and actually finding resistance. So sometimes it can be a little bit confusing in that you have the DP, the 15-minute DP resistance on your 5-minute chart, and it looks like it had gone above that and breached, where it hadn't really, because the resistance was coming in on the time frame that the DP was placed on. So just remember that. So what we were looking at here was then taking this DP sell, and at the first target there was a nice 2.9R. But we weren't looking to take it at the first target, because what I was looking at was, if you look at this rally up here, there's two other things that were going on. If we right mouse click, do Elliott wave intermediate, you can see this was the end of a 5-wave sequence. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We weren't quite at the minimum wave 5 WPT, but it was a 5-wave sequence. But the overriding thing that I liked on this was, if I look at this bar here, which was the 1510 bar, can you see how we had a VSA indication on our volume? In other words, this was telling us that the move up to new highs here was a unusually high volume. Now normally for amateur traders this would suggest buying, as increased volume on a wide range bar going above a previous high would then indicate buying and the market's going to continue. But we have the advantage in MTPredictor in that we can place our DPs off the prior level and we can see what happens when the market gets into these levels. You can see what happened here is the market made a red sell bar and then reversed and then came back down quite significantly. So we knew that the volume, or the higher than usual volume on this 1510 bar, was not actually buying, it was actually the professionals stepping in and selling. So what does that mean for our potential short trade off here? Well, it means that we were looking to run this trade a bit further because we know the professionals stepping in normally means that they're going to move the market further to create a bigger profit for themselves. So rather than looking to come out at the first target here, you look to run this a bit further and actually down into potentially the close of the day down here for a potential 7.7R trade. So that was a very, very good trade indeed, but also gives you a very good indication of how to use the more advanced tools in the software. Remember, MTPredictor is not just a package where you just look at these automatic setups and trade them blindly. It's an educational package as well, where we actually teach you to look at the patterns going into these highs and lows as well. We teach you to look at the higher time frame support and resistance, because remember this was all unfolding at higher time frame resistance. We also look at the volume to see what the market was doing at the time, in particular what the professionals were doing at the time. So here everything was coming together for a potential high where we had an automatic DP sell. We had that unfolding at higher time frame 15-minute resistance. We had that unfolding at the end of a 5-wave sequence, and we also had that unfolding on a VSA setup where the professionals were indicating a change in trend as well. And as you can see, that produced a very, very nice trade of potentially 7.7R into about the close there. So 7.7R. Remember, we use correct position sizing to keep our initial risk small under control. So here the profit was approximately 7 times greater than the initial risk, or 7.7 times greater than the initial risk. Looking back on this actually caught the very high of the day. A lot of people say it's not possible to catch the highs and lows of the day. Well, it's because they haven't got the correct tools. But can you see how all these things were coming together to indicate a potentially good trade? So this was the trade we were looking at in our training webinar yesterday, and why I wanted to have a look at it in today's video, particularly when it shows how to combine lots of the techniques we teach in MTPredictor to be able to uncover good trades. Remember, this is what MTPredictor is about. It's not just a black box automatic system just for you to follow these automatic trades. It's an educational package where we teach you how to understand what's happening in the markets and be able to filter the automatic trades to then be able to take the best ones and also understand why they're unfolding at the time to give you higher confidence in taking them.